People want to make money, and they want to make it fast.
How to make money so fast.
$100,000 a year.
$10,000 a month.
I made my first million at the age of 26.
How to retire in 10 years starting with $0.
But without understanding the real science behind making money, which school never taught us, most of them fail. It's not about working 16 hours a day, or having multiple income streams, or investing in the stock market. It's way beyond that. I know you don't want to become a millionaire, buried in debt and pressure. As the saying goes, we aren't chasing money, we are chasing freedom. Maybe when you clicked on this, you thought, oh, another how to get rich fast video. But I'll promise you this at the start. This will be the most valuable 20 minutes of your life. This video is heavily inspired by The Millionaire Fastlane, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, The Psychology of Money, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and dozens of other YouTube videos and documentaries. After months of research, combined with my own personal experiences, I've put everything I learned into this single golden video. So grab a pen and a notebook. Get ready to change the way you make money forever. Let's start with a question. What is money? You'll say, it's the thing in my bank account, or it's what I get paid every month. Honestly, 8 out of 10 of you watching this are thinking exactly that. But that's not what money is. That's just where money shows up. The real answer, money is value. When you hand over $10 for a coffee, you're not paying for coffee. You're paying for the value you believe that coffee gives you, the taste, the energy, the 5 minutes of peace before your day starts. The money is just the receipt for that value. So, think with me. If money is value, then making money is never actually about money. It's about value. Find the value, and the money follows. But most of us were never taught this. We were taught the opposite. Go to school, get good grades, get a degree, get a job, and that job will pay you money, because that's just how it works, right? You're wrong. A job pays you because you're solving someone else's problem. Your boss has a problem. Maybe it's the shop floor needs cleaning, or the company needs someone to manage the accounts. You solve that problem, and in return, you get paid. That's it. That's the entire mechanism. So here's your first shift in thinking. Stop asking, how do I make money? Start asking, what problem can I solve? Because the size of the problem you solve determines the size of the money you make. Solve a small local problem, you make a small local amount. Solve a problem for an entire city, you make a city's worth of money. Solve a problem for the world. Well, that's how you get an Amazon or a Google. But here's the twist most people miss. It's not enough to just solve a problem. You also have to ask, who decides how much that solution is worth? The answer is the market. Not you, not your effort, not how many hours you put in, not even your passion. Think about it this way. A cleaner works incredibly hard, physically harder than almost anyone in the office. But the market pays an accountant more. Not because the accountant works harder, but because fewer people can do what the accountant does. The market doesn't pay for effort. It pays for value that's hard to replace. That single idea will save you years of frustration. Stop measuring your worth by how tired you are at the end of the day. Start measuring it by how replaceable you are. So, what is money? Money is value, decided by a market in exchange for a problem solved. Remember that. Because every single thing we talk about from here builds on top of that one idea. Most of what you believe about money isn't actually yours. It came from your parents, your childhood home, the first time you saw your mom or dad stress over a bill, the first time someone told you money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy. You didn't choose those beliefs. They were handed to you, quietly, before you were even old enough to question them. The problem is, those beliefs don't just sit there, harmless, in the back of your mind. They drive your behavior every single day. If you secretly believe rich people are bad people, then deep down, you don't actually want to become rich, because that would mean becoming someone you don't like. So you sabotage yourself without even realizing it. You undercharge. You avoid asking for raises. You feel guilty when money comes in. I remember the first time I charged $1,000 for a design project. My first reaction wasn't excitement. It was, did I just cheat someone? How am I supposed to make this much money from a single project? But I hadn't cheated anyone, and I definitely wasn't overpaid. The real issue was simpler than that. I just didn't believe that earning that much money in just a few days was something normal people got to do. This is why Secrets of the Millionaire Mind makes such a bold claim. Your bank account is just a mirror. It's not reflecting your effort, it's reflecting your beliefs. But beliefs are only half the story. The other half is just pure psychology. The invisible traps your brain sets for you that have nothing to do with how much you earn. Ostrich effect is one of them. You know that feeling right after a big night out, when you're scared to check your bank balance? That's it. Your brain is built to avoid bad news, even when avoiding it makes things worse. Hyperbolic discounting, a fancy term for a simple trap, choosing the small reward now over the bigger reward later. New shoes today, instead of money invested for tomorrow. Your brain is wired to want it now. Tomorrow doesn't feel real yet. And then there's the one that quietly drains almost everyone. Social proof. Your colleague buys the new iPhone, so suddenly you feel like you need one too. Not because you need it, because everyone around you has it, and some old, primal part of your brain panics at the thought of falling behind the group. The uncomfortable truth is, you could learn every formula, every investment strategy, every trick in this vid. But if your beliefs and your psychology are working against you, none of it will stick. This is why so many lottery winners go broke. This is why athletes earning millions end up with nothing but debt. Production without the right mindset just leaks out faster than it came in. But the good news is, beliefs can be rewritten. And if you've stayed with me this far, you're already doing exactly that. You weren't born believing money is bad, or that you're not capable of having it. Somebody taught you that, which means somebody or something can teach you the opposite. And that starts the moment you stop asking, why don't I have money? And start asking, what do I currently believe about money? And is it even true? Let's go back to something we touched on earlier, solving problems, because this is where most people get stuck, and it's worth slowing down here. You've probably had this thought, okay, fine, solve a problem, but I'm not Jeff Bezos. I don't have $1 billion idea, I don't even know where to start. You don't need $1 billion idea. You need one idea, done properly. And the path from idea to wealth has 2 steps that most people skip straight past. Step 1, scale. This is the part the Millionaire Fastlane hammers home, and it's the single biggest difference between a job and real wealth. Imagine you're a piano teacher, charging $50 an hour. You're really good at it, you're booked solid. But the trap is still there. There are only so many hours in a day. Your income has a ceiling, and that ceiling is your own body, your own time. You didn't build a business, you built yourself a very demanding job. Instead, you record yourself playing covers, lessons, whatever you're great at, and post them on YouTube. You build an audience, then you turn it into an online course, and sell it to anyone, anywhere in the world. While you sleep, that course keeps making money. That's scale. The work happens once, the reward happens infinitely. This is the real difference between the people who stay comfortable and the people who become wealthy. It's not intelligence, it's not luck, it's whether their solution is chained to their own time or set free from it. Step 2 is knowing where your effort should actually go, especially at the start. People here build wealth, and they think, I should diversify. Try a few things, a side hustle here, a little investing there, maybe some freelance work on weekends. It sounds smart. It's actually one of the slowest paths. If you spread yourself across 5 different things, you end up mediocre at all 5. A little money from here, a little money from there. And 6 months later, you've made almost nothing, and learned almost nothing deeply enough to grow it. Every wealthy person you can name became wealthy by going all in on one thing and becoming genuinely excellent at it. Diversifying is for protecting wealth you already have, not for building wealth you don't have yet. So if you're starting from zero, the rule is simple. Pick one problem, one solution. Get scary good at it. Let it actually make some real money before you even think about a second thing. And there's one more shift in thinking that changes everything, especially when you don't have much money to invest. At the very beginning, you're not actually short on money, you're short on skill. And that means, at zero, the best investment isn't the stock market. It's you. $1,000 in the stock market, at a great year, might earn you $200 back. But that same $1,000 spent learning a skill that raises your income by even a few $100s a month, that's not a 10% return. That's a return the stock market could never give you, not at the start. This is the part nobody puts in the headline, because invest in yourself doesn't sound as exciting as buy this stock. But it's the actual starting point for almost every story of someone going from nothing to something. Another question: if two people both earn 6 figures a year, does that mean they're both financially secure? You'd think so, but it's not even close to true. There's a study that found, out of people earning over $100,000 a year, 1 in 10 of them were still living paycheck to paycheck. Same income, completely different financial reality. So what's the difference? It comes down to one simple relationship: what comes in versus what goes out, production versus consumption. For most of us, the real issue was never the income side, it's the spending side. There's a name for the trap that quietly eats away at every raise you ever get. It's called lifestyle inflation. You get a raise of, say, $500 a month. So naturally, you upgrade a slightly nicer apartment, a slightly nicer car, $500 more coming in, and the same going out. You didn't get richer, you just got a raise and handed it straight to your landlord. This is why income alone never tells the full story. There's a businessman who runs mergers and acquisitions on Wall Street, earning between $3 and $10 million some years. Sounds like the definition of wealthy, right? But after the taxes, the divorce payments, the mansion, the lifestyle that comes with looking the part, he saves almost nothing. He lies awake some nights wondering what happens if the money stops coming in. By the numbers, he's not wealthy. He's just got a high-paying job with high-paying stress attached to it. Now picture someone completely different. A 64-year-old man, living off a small pension and Social Security, owning a handful of laundry machines in a trailer park, walking around with a cane to go collect his earnings. He makes about $32,000 a year. He spends $28,000. That's it. That $4,000 gap every single year makes him wealthier, in the truest sense, than the man earning 100 times more. Because the real definition of wealth is not how much you make. It's not even how much you have. Wealth is having passive income that's greater than what you spend. The things you see, the car, the house, the watch, that's not wealth. That's just rich. Wealth is what you don't see, the gap, quietly growing in the background every single month. So how do you actually build that gap on purpose, instead of leaving it to chance? This is where it helps to have an actual number to aim for. Something Rich Dad Poor Dad and modern personal finance both circle around in different ways. Take your yearly expenses and multiply that number by 25. That's roughly the amount you'd need sitting in investments for that money to support you for the rest of your life, without ever running dry. If you spend $40,000 a year to live, your number is $1 million. If you spend $30,000, it's $750. Suddenly, I want to be financially free stops being a wish and becomes a number you can actually track. Cut your monthly expenses by even $200, and you've just lowered that target by $60,000. Some of the biggest wins here don't come from skipping your morning coffee. They come from the big 3: where you live, what you drive, and what you eat. Those 3 categories alone make up most of what people spend in a year. But before any of this, before investing a single dollar, there's a foundation that has to be poured first, or the whole thing crumbles the moment life throws a problem at you. First, a small emergency fund, enough to cover the unexpected, a car repair, a medical bill, so a small problem doesn't turn into new debt. Second, any high-interest debt gets killed before you invest anywhere else. Paying off a debt charging 15% interest is, in effect, a guaranteed 15% return. No stock market can promise you that. And third, a bigger cushion, 3 to 6 months of expenses, just sitting ready. Not for emergencies this time, but for opportunities. The friend who wants to start a business with you. The course that could double your skill set. Without this cushion, you have to say no to every opportunity that knocks. With it, you finally have room to say yes. Before I started this YouTube channel, I did exactly this. I saved up 1 year of expenses and fully committed to making videos. I knew I had the skill set, and I knew I could scale it. That cushion is what gave me the room to actually try. And here's something almost everyone overlooks while building all this: the weight of decisions made before you even understood any of this. The expensive car still being paid off, the apartment that quietly eats half your income. Psychologists call this the sunk cost fallacy, staying loyal to a bad decision simply because you've already spent time or money on it. But the truth is uncomfortable and freeing at the same time. What you already spent has zero say in what you do next. The only question worth asking is this: if you were starting fresh today, knowing everything you know now, would you make that same choice again? If the answer's no, it might be time to let it go, even if it feels like a step backward. Sometimes, the step backward is the very thing that finally sets you free.